from December 2019, what everyone got to know as coronavirus stared its ugly head in Wuhan, China. And then by February 2020, Nigeria joined that race for a remedy for that virus that was ravaging the world all over. And then 1 year after, how have we fared in that search for a cure or a remedy for that pandemic? And how has the world come to terms with what has become now the new normal? I have on the interview today someone who should know. He is the president of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria and a former member of the Presidential Advisory Committee for Shopee, Mazi Ohuabunwa. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you.
For this period, the world is still trying to find how to cure this virus that is ravaging everyone. And what has become more acceptable at this time is the vaccine. Nigeria, unfortunately, cannot boast of its own vaccine despite the pool of human resources that we have in the country, virologists, pharmacists like you, and the rest. What do you think is the problem? What do you think is the challenge? Why Nigeria cannot develop a homegrown remedy for this virus?
Well, the challenge is, my people say, preparation precedes success. When you don't prepare for a thing, maybe you just stumble into it. We have not prepared. We didn't prepare for coronavirus. We didn't prepare for this kind of vaccine-moderated infection. So that's why we were caught flat, foot flat on the floor. You can also say that most of the world was not prepared for coronavirus or COVID-19. But unlike us, they had some basic preparations to fight diseases. They had some basic research facilities primed to deal with both infectious diseases and also chronic and non-infective diseases. They had prepared, they had institutions, they had research institutions that were primed and were working. Even if they were not expecting COVID-19, but they had antiviral activity, they had antibacterial activity. They know that these other bacteria, virus, or protozoa, these are the things that cause trouble for man. They didn't know it was going to be SARS-2. But when it came, they responded. But Nigeria had no backbone. Our research institutes were not primed. Many of them were non-functional and sub-optimized, sub-funded, with no real focus. They had no vision. They were not told to discover anything, prevent anything. They were just doing serendipity studies and people doing academic studies. No specific direction. So it was the major reason why when it came, we have had no answer. And as I speak to you, we are still struggling to see if there can be any answer at all.
Okay, would you assess, I would like you to assess government's response so far. Some people say that what Nigeria had done for this 1 year thereabout is more like copy and paste. What the Western world do, we do. I mean, when it is time for lockdown, we lock down. When it's time for reopening, we reopen. There is hardly any clear thought out, well thought out remedy that would address our peculiarities. Having this in mind, assess what Nigeria had done so far.
Well, I agree with the cut and paste analogy, but I want to give us credit for even sometimes pasting better than the original post. Nigeria has done well in copying and paste. I must tell you that, especially in the area of following on instructions. Even though some of us were a little bit worried that there was no originality, no original thinking, but the PTF and the government has stayed the course in passing the message and staying strong on the message. That for me is the saving grace. There has been no confusion. Nobody has been left in a doubt as to the way the government solved the problem. It had never been underrated. That's where we've done well. But is it cut and paste correct? Is it original? No. And that is also the other side of it. We have not been original. I remember early when this thing started, we made proposals. The use, for example, the use of face masks. In March, we recommended, it was thrown away. WHO has not said anything. It's not been proven. So the CDC had a dismissive attitude to anything that didn't come from WHO or CDC or from the global. We franchised everything. Of course, they were trying to play safe. They didn't want to say or do anything that tomorrow someone will blame them. But you also have the consequence of playing safe. You will pass when, as they say, if you don't want to take a risk, you follow the path that has already been beaten, and all the animals have passed, eating up all the ants and all the worms. When you come later, you find nothing to eat. It's safe, but nothing. So that was the issue with the way we managed. We were very conservative, and we depended so much on WHO, on what the world said. No originality at all. So I don't understand that at all. And it's something that keeps going wrong in this country. The country sees the leadership and the management of our country sees the country from the perspective of the public sector and minimizes the great potentials in the private sector. All the assets in the private sector and the assets in the public sector belong to Nigeria. But when we're counting the assets, we look at all the government assets. When we're talking about how to mobilize that to utilize. Today, if you listen to America, they are distributing their vaccines through pharmacies. Pharmacies are private institutions. America is distributing through pharmacies and hastening responses. They are doing tests through pharmacies. But you hear Nigeria talk about community pharmacy. As far as they are concerned, the only access, the only place they want to do testing is in where you have a molecular laboratory, or where they want to do vaccine is in health centers. So it's something we need to work on to realize that the public, private facilities, private potentials, private assets are national assets.
There's need for collaboration.
Not collaboration, for
that is
involvement.
Yes, exactly.
Involvement. Well, they were not being involved.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's an area I think we didn't get it well, because if we had mobilized our resources, maybe we could have done better in response, in passing the message, in drilling down, But in terms of the PTF staying on course and the message, I've been so impressed, because even when many people didn't see how they were painting it, but it remained, and what they said have come to pass, because we thought that we were completely immune. But the second phase of COVID has devastated. In fact, if we were to report the deaths, we'll probably be equaling some of the records in the world. In my opinion, more than half of the infections are not reported, more than half, and more than half of the deaths. Because people got tired, some people went to isolation centers and they were not well treated, so people are not going back. They stay in their homes or go to private treatment. So, we won in a few places, but we lost in quite a lot.
Okay, studies are still going on how effective, or how the level of efficacy for the vaccine that everybody is running after. But what is constant, or what may have been acceptable to many, is that it does not have 100% effect. That it's not everyone that takes the vaccine, gets cured. What does that tell you? How does that direct your mind to think towards finding a lasting remedy?
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to put on record that there's no cure for, nobody has found a cure for COVID-19. And vaccine is not a cure. Vaccine is a preventive mechanism. It's something to help you prevent it. If it affects you, not to manifest, because the vaccine is to stimulate the production of antibodies. So it's like waiting for the disease. If it comes, they attack it faster than your normal defense will have done. Every ailment, before you manifest an ailment, is it malaria, is it typhoid, whatever, the body has fought it. It's when that organism overcomes the defense. You know, the blood has defensive, the body has defensive mechanism. It has phagocytes, monocytes, and all kinds of white blood cells that fight disease along with other immune modulators. But when they overwhelm, either by the lethality or the virulence of a particular offending microorganism, either because of the nature of your own internal immune system or how the load of inoculation, then your defenses are overrun.
Does that explain why the thought that some people may take the vaccine and yet get infected?
Yes. The vaccine, that's why first of all, it doesn't have 100% efficacy. So that means that some people will still take it and not be protected, first and foremost. They will not be protected. Some also take it and the protection will be limited. You know, if they get a normal inoculation, then they may fight it. The antibodies they've developed may. But if it's a heavy inoculation, you know, it might overwhelm the same level of preparation. It is a relief that at least you can help prevent. But what it tells us is that we must also accompany the vaccine with other non-pharmaceutical recommended measures to avoid the infection at all.
Okay, that's actually where I wanted to take it to. Since it's clear that even when someone had been vaccinated, he could still come down with the virus. What are those other ways of ensuring or improving the chances of avoiding being infected in first place?
The primary chance is to avoid the possibility of somebody passing it to you. And that was when we started this interview. I said I was going to wear mine until we give ourselves sufficient gap, because there's a distance if you are producing droplets, even if you are symptomatic, and then if I take it on, I can. So we avoid it. That's the first thing, physical distance. Then we took barriers, face barriers or mask or whatever we'll call it. Then we avoid crowding. This office space was just 2 or 3 of us. If we're now 5 or 6, we increase the chance of, if anybody is symptomatic or asymptomatic. So avoid crowd in an enclosure and keep distance. Preferably operate in the open, so where you can have enough space and there can be ventilation. That's what it is essentially. As they say, wash your hands, avoid touching your face and touching your mouth. Wash your hand clean, use soap or use hand sanitizers. Just those consciousness of hygiene. The moment you come back, you clean your hands, you take your bath, some people now inhale steam, because when the virus comes, it lodges in your oropharyngeal or nasopharyngeal areas in your nose, and it stays there a few hours or days before it now goes into your lung. So if you can flush it out from your nasal area, you may prevent it from going further. So you need to keep being that conscious that you need, and you keep boosting your immunity, sleeping well, eating well, and taking certain vitamins and immuno boosters that are all over the place.
Okay, what is clear is that the world is in for a very long journey, since there's no cure yet. So, but it's just prevention and management. But there's a new term that is gaining popularity, which is called vaccine passport. They say it's a development of a digital process to confirm or to ascertain those people that have taken the passport, the vaccine. Some countries are already considering adopting that to limit who gains entrance into their country. What do you think where do you think this will leave a country like Nigeria that is still struggling to find vaccine for its very large population?
Well, it's going to be very painful for our country if that is, because first of all, we'll travel, and therefore we'll hold the short end of the stick, and it's going to affect our economy. In fact, it's going to affect global economy. Anything that restricts movement, Because the global economy is modulated by the number of transactions. Most of these transactions are human-driven. Now we do machine-driven, but a lot of human-driven. So if you restrict human motion and ability to have intercourse, you are restricting the economy immediately.
Particularly for an economy like Nigeria that depends on
largely on intercourse, people moving around and coming and going. So it's going to be bad news for us, and I just hope it doesn't get to that level. That the world will sufficiently ramp their, especially those developed countries, ramp up their vaccination, and then begin to build herd immunity, because that's the other thing that is going to help us. How does herd immunity develop? Is that if you take the vaccine and you have a sub dose or even a dose that the vaccine, the body produces antibodies that will fight that and produces more. So it has antibodies in readiness. And when you take, everybody gets small suboptimal infection, they develop some immunity. So overall, you might just find that we're living with it and we're passing it to each other and nobody gets sick, because we now have some residual immunity. But nobody is able to determine yet. A friend of mine suddenly died from a second infection of COVID. So you would have thought that the first will have given him immunity, because that's the whole thing. The vaccine is just the same. The vaccine is equivalent to giving you COVID. So the test they do, it will show the efficacy of vaccine is that they give you this vaccine, and then they put you in an environment where you can get the infection, and then they see that whether you fall ill or you don't fall ill. If you don't fall ill, it means you are protected by the vaccine. If you fall, it means that's the way the performance or the efficacy was measured in clinical setting. But when many people have the vaccine and then the community now moves around, we restore movement, and those who are not affected get infected, even if you're taking the vaccine, it strengthens the vaccine, the antibody production. Then the level of people who come down to the illness will become low. But we're going to live with it a long time. That's the truth. Before you get, let's take a country, Nigeria. When do you think we shall completely vaccinate Nigerians?
Over 200 million.
They said, the PTF said we shall achieve 70 million in 2 years by 2020. 70 million probably. Did I quote them right?
And the number will keep population.
2 years, 2022. Then how about the other 130 million? When are we going to 2040? So it's going to be a tough deal for Nigeria, but thank God that we're Africans. Thank God for the grace of God that is abundant for Africans, and thank God for our food and our environment. Okay. You know, they have to protect us, because if we're in the cold environment, will be worse. The fact that we're in a warm environment is also a natural protective opportunity. The kind of food we eat, spicy, things that are always, allowing the vasodilatation and also flushing out. You eat pepper soup, you begin to sneeze, you begin to pass nasal. Those things help to clean whatever is lodging there without you are making any effort. Those things have helped. They've helped.
Okay, again, it's of concern. Your hope is that the thought of having the vaccine passport may just fizzle out and not become a reality because of how it's going to affect Nigeria. But another thing that is of concern is the warning by the founder of Microsoft, Bill Gates, recently, that the world should prepare for another pandemic, which may be worse than COVID-19. It creates fear in some quarters, but some people may see it as a call to action for an economy or for a system that allocates less than 5% of its budget to healthcare. What do you think this means for Nigeria if there is going to be another pandemic that may be worse than COVID-19?
Well, Bill Gates just shows he's a smart guy, just an intelligent guy, because what he said is nothing really. He probably is the first person to say it, but it's something many people know, but they've not said it. Because watch it now. Watch the world, the way the world is going. We're trying to deal with Ebola. Ebola is still hitting people. And you know that one kills like, and we contained it, but it's going to come back. Because as long as human beings continue to defy nature, don't let me get philosophical, but that's the truth. Diseases will come and they will get more lethal, more virulent, the more we continue to defy nature. Bill Gates, if you call him a prophet, is just a smart prophet. He just said what will happen. And I know it will happen.
So where does that leave? What does
Nigeria?
Exactly.
Nigeria should wake up. Because they said, first fool, not be fool. Second fool, not be fool proper. So Nigerian ought to, this cut us pants down. If I were in a position to determine what happens to the country, I'm going to set up scientists and give them mandate. What do you want to make sure that when the next, is it COVID-2 or COVID-3 or SARS-3 or SARS-4 comes, that we have not only a vaccine but a therapeutic, a curative. Because that's the area we can compete today. We can't compete in vaccines. We don't have the technology. We don't have the infrastructure. But we can compete in the therapeutics from our natural fauna and from our phytomedicines. We can compete. I believe really that every disease that will afflict man, God has placed the cure within your community. Because God is a complete, when He created the world, He said it's finished. Everything is there. But, and you know that our grandparents, our ancestors didn't drink any of this allopathic medicine. They used all kinds of things, and some of them lived longer than we're living.
So there's need for Nigerian
government to go back to where we are. National Institute of Pharmaceutical Research and Development, National Institute of Medical Research, National Veterinary or Virology Research. You know, these things were built many years ago, but we abandoned them. Go back, revamp these institutions, and put money and set targets. Not just give money for research and you don't demand outcome. This is what next time the disease is coming, is it 5 or 10 years, we should have vaccines that we can really ramp up. We should acquire the technology, like biotech technology that Pfizer acquired or Moderna acquired. They're using it to produce in 1 year. You know, the fastest vaccines have been produced. So our level of preparedness should be enhanced. That's the lesson we should learn, and not to come back and we're begging Madagascar to give us their natural product they could produce locally, which we could produce here.
Okay. Now, let's get away from the issues of COVID-19 briefly, so that it's reported in the news that you are aspiring to run for the presidency in 2023. How long have you had this dream, or is it one of those thoughts that came with events of the moment?
No, you know, I've been like Jonah, who was told to go to Nineveh. Jonah decided to go to Tarshish, but eventually ended up in Nineveh because God arrested him. My brother, in 2010, I wrote this book, Nigeria, Need for the Evolution of a New Nation. This is my print, my express vision of how Nigeria can be healed and made a wholesome country. A country that can move from third world to first world. A country that can deal with poverty and deal with issues of corruption, injustice, and insecurity. How we can reduce the cost of running our government. This book put it in 2010. I wasn't going for office. I didn't write it as a manifesto. But it's a burden I've carried. The burden took me to the Nigeria Economic Summit. I became chairman. To MAN, Ikeja, I became chairman. To NECA, to Nigeria American Chamber of Commerce. I was in Vision 2010, 2020, fashioning strategies how to make this country competitive, globally competitive like the rest of the world where we go. I worked for a multinational company for many years. And each time I went out of the country, I wondered, is there something wrong with us? Can't we make our country like this? But I thought my role was just right and ask some other people to implement my ideas. But eventually came to me that I needed to do more than write or complain or run summits and conferences. that I need to throw my heart into the ring. Let us know why these things have become difficult to build a nation that works for all.
One of the biggest challenges many people have identified in Nigeria is the distrust among the peoples of the country. Now we have banditry in some places. In fact, the latest in the news is that the bandits are demanding for amnesty, the same way the Niger Delta militants were given amnesty by President Musa Yar'Adua, late president. If you achieve what you set out to do, how will you address that issue where different parts of the country will put the nation first before their interests, their personal
It's the easiest thing to do.
Okay.
Very easy. Just be transparent and be fair and ensure that there is justice to everybody. That nobody is maligned, mistreated, misjudged, that no criminal goes free, no innocent is framed and imprisoned. That what is good for the gander is good for the goose. If we have 20 naira, we'll bring it transparently, we'll put it on the table. You, northeast, northwest, north-south, south-south, how do we share this 20 naira? And we'll agree that the way to share is take 2 naira each.
But that agreement is where the problem is.
No, the agreement is lack of transparency. Everything that the northerner wants is what the southerner wants. The easterner wants what the westerner. But if they find a leader who treats everybody equally, then they'll trust him. And they'll stop fighting, it should be my people, it should be my turn. Everybody comes to the table, let's be transparent. How much are we making from oil? Let everybody know. How much are we making from taxes, from custom duty? It's well placed, not today. Do you know how much money we make? Do you know how much crude they steal?
Okay, that's a fine place to drop it. Thank you so much for giving us your time on this interview.
Thank you.
And to you that watched, it's our pleasure that you did. Thank you so much for watching.